A very pleasant good evening to everyone in the class of Steele this evening. Today is Friday, the 11th of February, 2022. And we are very pleased to invite you to join with us in this class. This evening's class is actually live. It is being streamed live on our social media platforms. It's on Facebook. It's going to be on YouTube, and we will soon have it equally on our LinkedIn platform. So you're very welcome to join with us. With us this evening, with special mention, I want to welcome the person of our COO, in the person of Her Excellency Doreen Burunji of Uganda. I equally want to acknowledge the person of His Excellency Dr. Donald Ewers, our Chief of Protocol in the class of Steele. Very welcome again to another amazing class that we will be sharing this evening. I want to identify the person of His Royal Majesty Edwin Efiani Madu. Your Royal Majesty, again, you're welcome with us. Always such a pleasure to have you seated in class with us on these special master classes. I want to acknowledge the person of Homemakers Women's Development Initiative CEO and founder, the person of Her Excellency Margaret Ahmed. Margaret, again, a pleasure to have you with us. We equally want to acknowledge also the First Lady, Her Excellency Jeannie Steele, all of the ambassadors, Ambassador Dr. Charles, Her Excellency Zanis Amaka Curry. We also acknowledge His Excellency Daniel Sapuru, who is responsible for the Franco regions in the class of Steele. All other dignitaries and persons who are observing, you are very welcome this evening. This evening is actually the final session in what was a wonderful 2-week submission of discussions, 2 weeks pertaining to changing the language of the mind. And the past 2 weeks have been very, very interesting. Before we jump into that session, I want to share the link. Please have the link here. And this link is a live link for this evening's session, as this evening's session is going to be remaining live, that you can share it with others at will. With that being said, let's share the screen and jump straight into this evening's session. So we're looking at changing the language of the mind, and this is the final class. The last slide that we looked at was actually this slide that I'm sharing here, which is negative versus positive connotations. And examples of positive connotation, positive word is confident. And confidence can be interpreted, we said, as arrogance. A negative connotation of confident can be considered as arrogant. The architect is very confident in his skills. We discussed about the architect. And then we looked at the architect behaves arrogant about his word. One is a positive word, but then it has a negative connotation that can go with it. Then we also looked at positive. The children in the nursery are so energetic. And negative way of looking at that is labeling, if I should use that term, labeling the children as very hyperactive. The children in the nursery are very hyperactive. It's not a very positive word. It speaks towards creating a syndrome. For example, we have in the UK and around the world in the DSM, or the Diagnostic Statistical Manual or Classification, that is called hyperactive, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So hyperactive or hyperactivity is kind of a negative way of looking at what could be considered energetic, confident, strong, well able, fit. Then we have another 2 words that we look at, positive word. They have a unique culture. And the negative word is they are a strange people. And this culture stimulated a lot of very interesting dialogue in our last class. It was a very interesting thing where we looked at culture and the word cult and culture that took us off from this particular slide and into some very, very healthy and stimulating debate. As a matter of fact, I think that you should get that particular session so that you are able to hear some of that debate. So with that being said, let's jump right into the follow-up, which we are going to go into the next couple of slides for today's class. We have negative versus positive connotations continued, and we look at positive. She has been very assertive and direct in asking her questions. A negative connotation could be she has been very pushy about her views. Somebody that is assertive, and as a matter of fact, I think we would label a lot of professional reporters as pushy, arrogant and pushy. But I think one of the successful tenets of being a good reporter is being assertive, being able to ask those questions and being able to push your subject or the person in question to the level of really answering a question that they might not answer. As a matter of fact, I fondly remember the president of the United States, Donald Trump, not being very fond of reporters because of their assertiveness that obviously in his assessment would be pushy. Then we also look at positive and negative again, and we have the group held a pro-peace rally. And the negative aspect is the group held an anti-war rally. Look at words that you could choose. Are you pro-peace or are you anti-war? And this one caused a lot of debate with me and the First Lady today, because I said to the First Lady, anti-war is not negative. But in conclusion, what we discovered is it is not negative depending on where you use it. So I said to her, for example, in our discussion, we were looking at, if you go to some of those countries where they have war every day, 20 and 30 years, there's been war going on. Those persons have lived in war, born in war, raised in war, and they continue to experience war. So making a statement like I'm coming and I'm anti-war is a good statement for those individuals, because it means that they who are so affiliated, acquainted, accustomed to war, for them, an anti-war person is a breath of fresh air, to say the least. But somebody that is in an environment that is always peaceful, when you talk about war, I am anti-war. Why are you going to mention war? There's no need for discussing your anti-war. Please, you're pro-peace. You're with me in forming peace and developing peace. So don't use a negative word like anti-war, please. We're not saying that we're fighting war. And, no, please, it's okay. So it depends on where you use these words that will give strength to the meanings. But we also had a very interesting discussion that took us for over, I think we must have been in a discussion today for over half an hour on these two lines. And I said to the First Lady, I said, you know what's interesting? When individuals hear about the UN Peacekeeping Forces and they see them show up with guns, you ask an interesting question. Why are you showing up for peace and you're carrying a gun? And I said, darling, I think I should address that even today in the class, because it's interesting. So I drew this diagram, and in this diagram had 5 groups of people. Some are for peace, and 5 groups of people who are for war. And the UN Peacekeeping Forces have a very interesting portfolio. Their portfolio is to bring peace where there's war, keep peace where there's a ceasefire, and initiate peace if it is antagonized. And what do I mean by that? If you're going to somebody that's a man of war and you want to have peace, interestingly, that man of war might remove your light post because he's not interested in peace. So you see these persons that they have their hands waving, please, please, peace, peace. They're waving their hands. And then you see a man of war showing up and just removing them out of his way. Now, when the UN shows up or the United Nations shows up to be mediator between the two, the difference is that they're able to say, we come in peace. We want to stimulate peace. But if attacked or provoked or pushed, then they have the ability to protect themselves rather than those that want peace and are going with their hands waving a white flag and then getting wiped out by those that want war. So we sometimes have to look at the dynamics and the tenets that are used in bridging the gap between peace and war, peace and conflict, and identify the necessity of protecting yourself when you're going into a potential conflict. Remember, I use the word potential conflict because if I'm seen as a man of peace coming to bring peace, I don't expect you would want to take me out. Surely not. But if you try to take me out, I can assure you I have the ability to protect myself. So we see these things that I think was necessary for me to plug that in there. And the United Nations don't have to support me for that one. That one was free off the cuff from the class of Steele. Let's go on. So we looked at positive and negative. The manager is cautious when taking risks. The manager is fearful when taking risks. Somebody might say he's cautious, but somebody might look at him, he's not cautious. He's a wimp. He's a chicken. He doesn't know how to deal with situations. He's not cautious. He's frightened. Because caution sometimes can come across as though you are afraid to deal with the issue or deal with the situation. As a matter of fact, interestingly, today I had a very interesting meeting. And I exercised caution in dealing with that meeting. His Excellency, Dr. Uriz and myself, we were in a very high-level meeting. And we had to exercise caution and decide to reconvene. How many of you know sometimes caution dictates don't come to an immediate decision, reconvene, refocus, and you're able to address it more appropriately when you exercise caution. So sometimes being cautious as a leader is very good and important. All right. Now let's look at another segment, connotation versus denotation. All right. Denotation is the lateral meaning, or the literal meaning, should I say, forgive me, the literal meaning of a word. Literally what it says, it means, literally. A connotation is an indirect or implied feeling or meaning. All right. It's indirect. It doesn't speak directly to what you're talking about. It's indirect. Let's look at a few of them. Denotation. Do you want me to pour you a glass of water? That's a denotation. That's a literal meaning. Pour a glass of water. The word pour. It's a denotation and a connotation. His work continued to pour in. So the word pour, when you're speaking about word or work, it doesn't fit there. You see where I'm going? The word pour speaks of a liquid and water into glass. You're pouring. So pouring has a denotation that you understand what it means literally. To literally pour water or pour something is an understanding that is clear. But when you use it in a different connotation, it changes. But we all understand what is meant by pour in. His word continued to pour in. It means that it continues. If you have a lot of contracts and they're pouring in, you're bringing more and more contracts to the table. You're pouring them in. So your mind goes back to the literal sense of the word so that you get the connotation, what is being meant by what was said. All right. For example, let's go another example. Denotation, the baby babbles. We know when we say the baby is babbling, the baby is babbling all the time. Babble. A connotation. I thought he would never stop babbling. I guess sometimes people say that about me. If they assess me and they think, oh, he's always babbling, talking a whole lot of nothing. Talk, never stopping. And that's what babbling is. So we have the connotation, and then we have the denotation. The denotation babbles, and we know what it means literally. So when you hear somebody is babbling in your mind, because you understand the literal sense of the word or the literal meaning of babbles, you get a sense when somebody says he was babbling. So remember that. All right, let's go on. A group of people. So let's look at this one. This one stimulated some interesting discussions. I'll tell you the honest truth. I long for the day when the class of Steele management team are able to go on a trip. And we'll go on a trip for a week or 2 weeks. And in that period, what we're going to do is we're just going to put together subjects and messages and we're going to put them all together as we grow and develop. I'm going to help you guys to write your books in one day. My goodness, I can't wait for those who are interested in writing their books. And we're going to bring them together, show you how to write your book in one day. I promise you, in 24 hours, some of you are going to go on a vacation and for 3 weeks and just write 21 books. Because when I show you how simple it is, how easy, my goodness. Somebody wave at me if you're excited about what tools we have coming in stream. You're going to get excited to understand how easy things are. But I'm excited for when the class of Steele management team and our select group go on these trips for 1 week and 2 weeks, where we are going to be clashing of minds together to make things happen. It's going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to it. My goodness. If you know the things that are inside of me, they're better felt than told. All right. So let's look at denotation, connotation. We have a clique. A clique is a group of people who exclude outsiders. A clique. So we in the class of Steele are going to form a few cliques. Of course, we need to have cliques, because how many of you know that in a big group, you have to have a select group that you don't invite everybody to? So there's some cliques that are going to be formed in the class of Steele. For example, the management team is a clique. It's just us. There's no one else. Outsiders are not allowed because it's for management teams. So it's a clique. But then you have a mob. A mob, an angry crowd gathering others who agree. So there's a mob, an angry crowd gathering others who agree. But sometimes individuals might look at your group and call it a mob, because you're creating such a stir in the ecosystem of the chaos that exists to bring about peace. So you're to those who want war, you are a mob. Are you with me? To those who want war, you are a mob. And the more people that you gather together that are peaceful and want to make things, you're forming a mob or a group of people that are gathering in this direction, focused together. Angry against the war that is happening, and you just get together, everybody, to pursue and to hinder and to stop it from progressing. So you can have an angry mob against any situation. So you have a clique or a mob. Then we have commitment. Let's look at this word commitment. And when you're writing, we want you to be mindful of your writing or even your speaking. The word commitment is one of the words that we're going to pick at in this little brief discussion. Commitment, the notation for commitment is a pledge to do. A pledge to do something, or a pledge to be. It's a part of you. You've established it. I'm committed. I'm committed to being here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 p.m. London time. I'm committed because there is something I have to do that is a part of my commitment. But then there's a connotation about the word commitment. For example, a commitment could also be an emotional connection to another person. I'm committed to Her Excellency Ambassador Doreen Burunji. I am committed to her. Now, someone hearing me say I'm committed to her, she's a female, I'm a male, and she's a very, very pleasant to look at lady, and I think I'm quite handsome myself. But sometimes when we use words, individuals sometimes might look at a different meaning. What is that commitment you're talking about? Be more specific. I'm committed because she is the COO of the class of Steele, and my intimacy with her, again, another word that can be misinterpreted or misconstrued. My intimacy meaning that the time we spend together in focused conversation, focused discussions, focus on a project or on the organization of the class of Steele can be, again, misinterpreted. So when we are writing, we need to be very careful how we write and what we say. So in other words, I think I would focus and say, Her Excellency Doreen is a very committed member of the class of Steele management team. And my work with her is extremely important to fulfill the vision of the class of Steele. Therefore, we spend a lot of time together ironing out the issues that pertain to the successful running of the class of Steele. So when you get a little wordy sometimes, how many of you know sometimes when you send a text message, it can leave you in a lot of problems. But sometimes when you talk a little bit more, it can save you a lot of misinterpretation and misrepresentation. I hope that little discourse has added value to your thinking. Another denotation that we looked at that me and the First Lady had a little smile at this one. Jack wore a blue trousers yesterday. then we wrote, Jack was blue after it was splashed by a passing car. Same blue. The same blue. But now we have two different meanings of the same word. Same word, but two different meanings. Let's go on. This slide is an important slide. I want you to observe this slide carefully. Don't pass anything. Everything that I put in a slide, as a matter of fact, you in the class of Steele, I will teach you some very important points. When you see me put anything in red in a slide, I want you to focus on it. If you don't write anything else, write what is red. When you see me put something in gray, subliminally, if you would use that term, write that down. That is equally as important. I'm not going to repeat those very often. Those who get accustomed to my teaching and my PowerPoint presentations, with time, you will understand and recognize that. Because sometimes I might go through slides very quickly because I don't want everybody to be snatching everything that I'm writing. So for you, when you see me do a presentation, anything that is in red and highlighted, snatch it, run with it, take it away, because it's the most important thing as far as I'm concerned. And anything that you see me in gray, that you have to focus to try to see it, it is there, and you need to take special notice of it. So let's go into this slide. Say exactly what you want. Prevent miscommunication. And under there, you would see I wrote something. Be aware of your audience. Be aware of your audience. Hear yourself before you speak. When I wrote this one, my wife was saying, but darling, everybody can't do that. I says, oh, boo. She says, you're going to have to teach them how to do it. Your Excellency, Doreen Burunji, could you unmute yourself? Let me pause here to give you an important lesson. I'm going to stop the screen share and teach you something. That's important. Your Excellency, Doreen Burunji, do you remember when I was trying to teach you to hear yourself? You're like,
Your Excellency.
What was it?
Yes.
What was it like? What was the revelation like when I tried to explain it to you and then you kind of grasp it? What was it like?
Well, for me, it was a whole new world. It was really a whole new world. And I was like, am I gonna listen to myself? So, somehow you listen to yourself, and then you start saying, oh, I didn't say this right. And you see gaps, opportunities for improvement when you begin to see yourself really, or hear yourself speak. And you then realize that you actually need help. Yeah.
And
yes, for me.
And did I also teach you about learning to listen when you read?
Yes, you did.
How interesting was that one?
You did. Yes.
How interesting did you find that particular subject about listening while reading?
Well, I the sentences were, in the beginning, they were sounding different, the tonation and the way they come out. And so I had to also work on that one to ensure that what I try to convey is what is written properly. Yes.
Thank you so very much, Your Excellency. I want to share this with us. I learned to listen to myself. As a matter of fact, I listen to myself so much that it might surprise you to know that at least 70% of what I say, I hear myself saying it before I say it. So I'm very confident. Meaning that in the split second that I'm pausing while I'm speaking, I'm hearing the next thing that I'm going to say. And I'm very quick at it. It's a practice that you develop over time. Hearing what you're going to say and hearing how it sounds. It takes practice. And I do it all the time. If somebody asks me a question, also, I actually answer the question in my head and hear myself answering the question before I speak. And I say what I hear in my head. If after processing it, it makes sense. How many of you get what I'm saying? And I want us to grasp it because it's really, really important. There are a number of individuals that I met that stutter. And please forgive me for doing this. I'm not mocking anyone. Please forgive me for doing this, but I'm doing it for a reason. Okay? Please forgive me for doing it, but I'm doing it for a reason. I want to tell you that if so, I've had individuals who stuttered like this, and I was able to bring them with a revelation to a place of speaking fluently without any troubles or stuttering. There's a reason why. Most individuals who stutter, it is because what they want to say is coming faster than their ability to articulate it. Wave at me if you understand what I just said. Just give me a wave if you understand what I'm saying. Their ability to articulate what they're going to say comes as a problem because they want to say it, but they don't know how to say it. So as a result of that, they don't want you to cut in. They want to stop you from interrupting them so they can finish what they want to say. And it is a battle of tongue versus brain. That's why it comes out as a stutter. Because they have not completed what they wanted to say in their heads first to get it from their brain to their tongue. Am I making sense to everybody? Okay. How do you heal somebody like that? It's simple. You teach that person, listen to what you want to say first. Listen, calm down, say it in your head. What do you want to say? And you go like, if I had to do it as a ventriloquist to make it easy, I want to say that I'm going to change so that individuals would know I'm a new person. So I go and say, I want to say that I'm going to change so that individuals will know I'm a new person. I said it in my head. So once they learn how to do that and calm down and not rush, they will handle it. Now it's the same thing for speakers, not the ones with a stutter, the ones with a poor vocabulary or a limited vocabulary. You find that if you speak quickly, it is difficult to communicate what you want to get across because your vocabulary might not have enough words in there to fill in the spaces. It's okay. As a matter of fact, when I used to write long letters and when I was writing my books, there were many times I had to change what I wanted to say because I couldn't spell the word and I wanted to carry on. So I started practicing going and looking at spelling words. And it would take me longer to do a lot of stuff because I was building my vocabulary. You have to study to show yourself competent in what you want to do. So listening and learning and building your vocabulary will help you to hear yourself before you speak, and it will increase our confidence. Before I jump in, are there any questions on that quickly? I'm going to allow any questions because that's really important. Anybody have any questions on that before I go on? Does anybody have any questions on that? I can see you. Zionist, go ahead, please. Your Excellency, Zionist.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, somebody who whose career is linguistic, and somebody whose career is, say, perhaps an engineer. Between the two of them, who is likely to make a better candidate of hearing themselves before they speak?
Well, an engineer, obviously, 100% is going to hear himself, because engineers are practiced to operate in their own space and environment. They hear themselves speaking. They listen to themselves. Oh, how am I going to fix this? And you hear yourself telling you how to do it, because an engineer or a computer programmer operates in a private environment. And in that private environment where they don't have to communicate with so many others, it is very easy to hear yourself, very easy. However, communicating is difficult for engineers, because hearing yourself talk to yourself and respond to yourself and answer does not mean that when you are in an environment that you're going to speak or on the subject matter that you are very competent. Because remember, both of them are in different environments and both of them command different authorities. An authority in an engineer being a good engineer and analytical skills working because he's figuring it out by himself is different than an orator or a linguist who speaks continually on a different platform continually. Now, here's another issue. A linguist who speaks 3 and 4 languages is a very challenged individual. Challenged because there are 2 types of linguistic capabilities. One is the learned and the ever learning, and 2 is the natural. The learned and ever learning is somebody that knows Spanish and is English is their first language, but they have the ability to first hear the person that is speaking Spanish and then translate it. But it takes time that they have to hear first and then translate. So the 2 dynamics can be different. Now, then you have those that they hear in Spanish, they hear in English, but they don't really hear the English. They actually hear the Spanish. That sounds really difficult to compute. But they know Spanish so well that when they hear English, they're hearing Spanish. Are you with me, Your Excellency?
Yes, Your Excellency.
So when you go to the United Nations, for example, the persons who are speaking, you would put in these earphones and you have the French, the English, the Chinese, and those persons who translate after it was spoken into English. Those persons are pros. Those persons hear Chinese spoken, but they're actually hearing English in their heads, so that they can speak exactly what they're hearing. So they speak what they hear. Okay, have I answered or added value?
Added value. Thank you, Your Excellency.
I see
answered and added value. Thank you.
Okay. And by the way, why the question about the engineer and the linguist? If I might inquire for my own interest, why the question, or were you just challenging me?
Well, we are your students. We meant to do both.
So which one were you doing?
Asking question to be informed and challenging you.
Thank you so very much. Challenge accepted. Did I do okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Dr. Charles, please go ahead.
What I want to put in this thing is that while we are talking, comes on when hearing yourself before you speak, in ministry, it helps so much in what we call the gift of word of knowledge. In the Bible, you say, as I hear, I speak. Most especially if you are a preacher man. Wow. You have to develop more than 2 ears. You'll be hearing the environment, and then you will be hearing with the inner ear. And the inner ear, as you hear, your mental ability will process it. Oftentimes, the Spirit of God, you may not hear some words in your audible voice, but right there in your heart. And before you proceed from your heart to your mental capability, it has to go through processes. So I think you rightly explain the spiritual, the spiritual exercise and things we've been encountering day by day in ministry. And that experience, the spiritual experience, you were able to explain it verbally very well. So that if somebody asks you what was that, like there are times I begin to speak, to preach to people, I pause, I say, thank you, Holy Spirit. It means that I have just got an information. I had something. Even I keep on hearing the Holy Spirit will concur, say, yes, that is right, because this is the reason why this is this. I started developing that, hearing yourself, like when I started reading the Bible. Along the line, I will be reading, then one voice will tell me, do you know why that clause is there? And when I developed that, I discovered that it was very, very well. It gives you understanding that while you are reading a book from an author, in the midst of reading, you are hearing the voice of the author yourself. It gives a clearer understanding, and you learn faster than you would have just reading and trying to digest. But when you key into this, you are hearing direct the voice of the author by the line, for it explains the positive. But I explain. If somebody asks me, what is this your experience? I may not explain it well until you hammered on it and you made everything clear. Thank you.
Dr. Charles, you've opened a can of worms, because I'm going to be very upfront with you and very transparent with you. You've just opened a can of worms. You're having two different conversations, if I might very rightly say to you. As a matter of fact, I will equally say to you, Dr. Charles, that is the very reason why we have a lot of false prophets going around thinking they're hearing the voice of the Holy Spirit, and they're really talking themselves. There's absolutely no sort of connection with the Holy Spirit. I will equally say to you, Dr. Charles, that hearing the voice of the Lord, as a minister, I'm a bishop, I'm a prophet, and I will tell you, the voice of the Lord sounds totally different than my own voice. I know the difference between my own voice and the voice of the Holy Spirit. And you take practice to learn the difference. So with that, don't do the debate. Don't do the debate, please. Not a debate now, Dr. Charles. Thank you.
No, it's not a debate. I want to tell you how we check and balance the boat.
No.
If you don't have checks and balances, if you don't check and balance the boat, you will go into error. I know that.
Dr. I don't want to go into the discussion now. I will have a master class on learning the voice, because there are so many voices that I will teach you, but I have to teach you at a different level first. But I will be very frank and open with you, because it's necessary. There are many people who think they're hearing the voice of the Lord, and they're just have not recognized they have actually learned how to listen to themselves, talking to themselves prior to opening their mouths, which is equally as important. So with that being said, and we will get into that at some time, but now is not the appropriate time. And as a matter of fact, I don't even think I would make that a public class, because when you teach individuals things, then they go and they behave as though they know it, and there are authorities on it. So that's a very select class for another time. I may charge maybe $5,000 or $10,000 for that class, and those that show up will be ones that I know will take. I see Zionists clapping your hands. Those that show up are ones that I know will take serious the teaching, and they will not take it for granted when I do that class. All right, and those in the class of Steele will be free, of course, because you're a member of the class of Steele. Okay, so please let me go on, because I really wanted us to hone in on this particular point. That's why it's a red. Hear yourself before you speak. According to what Dr. Charles just mentioned, I think I might even dare to say, make sure it is yourself that you're hearing and not the Holy Ghost. So let's go on. Use precise words. Use precise words. The reason, and Zionist, I was smiling because I asked you if you were challenging me or were you trying to get in. I wanted to be precise with what were your intentions. And that's why I smiled, because that's also very important. Get the answer you are seeking. Use precise words so you get the answer you are seeking. Sometimes you will appreciate this. A lot of people avoid talking to me, and I'll tell you why they do. Because it's not easy to pull wool over my eyes. As a matter of fact, I have such a good memory that I can remember sitting and listening to someone lecturing me for 45 minutes, which was supposed to be a back and forth conversation. But I listened for 45 minutes and waited my turn to address the subject at hand. And I took copious mental notes. I'm very good at that. And when I got back to the point that they left me at 45 minutes ago, they were very, very discomforted and uncomfortable. Why? Because a lot of times you have to appreciate that individuals who don't want you to get your point across would cross you, distract you, and try to push you down a road you don't want to go. What you have to do is learn how to be a creative speaker. Use precise words and get the answers you're looking for. Precise words accompanied with nonverbal cues is advisable. For example, you will see me do something like this. How many of you have seen this? Listen to me. Anytime you see me do that, don't be offended. What it means is I'm getting comfortable because I want to tell you something that is very important. So you will see me using some hand gestures, and those hand gestures, they mean something. Don't worry about them. They are actually to grasp your attention. You call them visual nonverbal cues. I raise my eyebrows sometimes. If I'm speaking, I look at you differently. Are you sure you understand me? And when I do this, I want you to tell me, do you understand me? So nonverbal cues work very well. Persons that speak monotonic. How many of you know there are some individuals that when they are talking to you, they talk like this. There's no tone level change. There's no difference. They are just recording and speaking, and they don't leave any significant impact on you. The reason is because your body is designed to respond to tones, is designed to respond to different levels. And when a person speaks like this, to be quite honest, after a brief while, it can become so taxing on your brain, it will equally become frustrating and overwhelming to bear. And you will want to on mute and shout so hard at that individual, because that exercise wore you out. So you learn to communicate, use words that are clear, and use tones that draw the person in. If you're saying something with a particular tone, it draws the person in or it pushes them away. You decide what you do with your tone, but your hand gestures as well are very important. Those nonverbal cues are very important. That's why when I'm communicating on Zoom, I like to use video, because I want to see the responses on your faces, and I want to see how you're taking what I'm saying, because those nonverbal cues tell me whether or not I am getting across my message. So when you're communicating, remember that. Make eye contact. Look at the person. Focus on them. Don't have conversations with individuals that you don't communicate, engage, and interact with intimately while conversing. Be available to offer explanation or show the bigger picture. Always be willing to show the bigger picture. Nobody gets it the first time. Me and the First Lady have some long discussions and debates. The next slide that I show you is going to show you some of the intimacy of the challenges that I have communicated with the First Lady. And I don't think I use the right word when I say challenges. I think the right word would be the intricate dialogues that are stimulated as a result of presenting the opinion of the First Lady. It's interesting. We have some interesting dialogue, but you must always be willing to give an explanation. Have a good idea about the subject at hand. Don't go teaching something you know nothing about. Please. I've seen so many individuals go and Google PowerPoint presentations on ABC. And then they snatch up the PowerPoint presentation and they start to converse. And then somebody asks them a question. Please, could you tell me what is? And they, that's an important point, and they divert it. I have fun when I go to conferences and seminars and I perceive, based on my own intelligence and observation, that the person is speaking on a subject of which they know nothing about. And as a matter of fact, anytime I observe a person does that, I just avoid listening to them, honestly. As sweet as the presentation they had was based on Google and the research they got, I just perceive this person is not very intelligent. Surely they quoted somebody like T.D. Jakes or Kevin Copeland or Kenneth Copeland or one of these great ministers, or they get some great orator that they says, wow, let me quote John Maxwell. And the funny thing is, when you quote persons like John Maxwell, their quotes are so wide. Everybody knows them when you quote them. Are you with me? But when you are an original, or when you know your subject content, then I celebrate you. I celebrate Her Excellency Dr. Anita Davis Defoe, because she knows her content. She is intimately connected with John Maxwell personally. She has a personal relationship. She just doesn't read his books and do his subjects or sermons or presentations. She is intimately connected with the modus operandi of presenting and putting those things together. So if you just buy a book and you read it, it doesn't qualify you as an authority on the book. You have to know the person and the mind of the person. And as our brother Dr. Charles said, the spirit of the writer. You have to know the spirit of the writer and understand that. So have a good idea about the subject at hand. I normally ask speakers to speak in an environment conducive to an authority they command. I don't like speakers speaking on something that they don't know anything about. That's why I say, do your research. Go do your research, get content, but have content-based discussions on your experiences within the context of the content. Are you with me? When you put a presentation together, let your life experiences come out in your presentation when you are sharing the content. Be aware of your tone. Have you noticed I wrote very aware? Very aware, your tone. As a matter of fact, one of the greatest speakers in my assessment is the one who has the ability to suck you in. Suck you in because his tone is appealing, but it's also dramatic. It creates an environment where you just want to hear. You just want to listen. Why? Because your tone sets the tone for the conversation. Your tone. As a matter of fact, I'm practicing toning down. I'm practicing it. I'm practicing it, toning down, because sometimes I can be overpowering. And I think I'm better suited in an environment where persons need an energizing boost, not the time right before bed. I'm not very good at that, unless I just want to get people going to sleep sometimes. But I'm very good when it comes to energizing and pumping people. Beware of your tone. Very, very aware at where you are. Who could hear you? Who's listening? What are you saying? The context. Be aware. Let your tone simulate the feeling you want the person to have. For example, let me give you a little example on tone. I say to the first lady, boo, you know I love you, don't you? Huh? You know I love you. But you could say the same thing. Boo, you know I love you, don't you? The tone sets the difference. You know I love you, huh? Tone and nonverbal cues. Yeah, I love you. So you learn and you reason and you use your communication. Do not be a mono communicator, meaning you communicate one way to everybody. Angry at your children when they do bad. Angry at your husband when he's trying to tell you he loves you. Angry when you go to catch the bus because you're just angry at everything. Frustrated, loud, angry everywhere. Don't be monotoned, monoconversant. Choose your environment. Be aware of your audience. Have you noticed I wrote that there? Be aware of your audience. Your tone with your children can never be the same tone you use with your husband. Never. Are you losing your buttons, your beans? How could one speak to one's husband or wife the same way one speaks to one's children? There's a total different divide. Daddy, how can you speak to mommy the same way you are speaking to baby? Something is wrong. As they will say in Nigeria, something wrong, oh, something wrong. How could you speak to the man on the bus and bark at him because you're angry, and then you come and your boss is reprimanding you for getting to work late, and you use the same tone to hey, I think something is wrong. Oh, so be very aware of your audience when you are speaking. Be aware. Don't let conversations cross over with your attitude and your emotions. Don't walk outside of your door angry with your environment and take it outside to your neighbor. What? Your neighbor didn't do you anything. Hello? The bus driver didn't do you anything. He's doing you a favor, as a matter of fact, getting you where you're going. So choose your tone and always be aware of your audience. I remember saying to some people that are in powerful positions, please, sir, I'll speak to you when you're ready to talk to me. Right now, it sounds like you're talking to somebody else that is definitely not me. Are you with me? But equally, we need to adopt that. We need to adopt that attitude that when we are speaking to others, we are what? Aware of our audience. A lot of people have tended wounds because they spoke the wrong way to the wrong person. And what I mean by tending a wound, the Bible says, he that rebuketh a fool tendeth a wound. So sometimes you go and you rebuke the wrong person. It's not your child. It's not your husband. It's somebody on the outside. Manage how you behave, how you communicate. Be aware of your audience. Know how to use connotations. Be aware of your audience. Be aware of whom you're speaking to. Be very cautious when including personal biases. This is an important one. How many of you know we all have a personal bias to every subject? Every subject. I have a personal bias to ministers of the gospel. I do, because I am a minister of the gospel. I have a right to have a bias. And my bias is based, like anybody else's bias is based on our experiences. However, our experiences are not standards. Our experiences are variables of situations or circumstances. They're variables. It means that you could have a conversation with Joe Bloggs on a very bad day and get a very horrible response. It doesn't mean that Joe Blogg is a horrible person. It doesn't mean that Joe Blogg doesn't know how to communicate. It just means that the bias that you have formed based on that particular conversation is actually baseless. Baseless meaning you can't take that to the shop and say this is who that person is, because it's not. That's just an experience you had. So be very cautious when including personal biases in conversations. However, please note this, however, the reason why I use be very cautious is because personal biases are also very important. Don't discard or discount your personal biases if you deem it appropriate to communicate them. Are you with me? Because your personal bias can also be the very experience of many others as well. Rephrase everyday statements and questions. Learn how to rephrase them. I'm not going to go into that because I think the time is now 16 minutes past 8. We're doing very well. And I want to bring to this session to a close. We just have a few more slides to go through, and I'm going to bring this one to a close. So bear with me. Lift your eyelids, wet your face, get up and walk around and stimulate yourself just for a few more. If you would humor me, please. Say exactly what you want. Prevent self-sabotage. Say exactly what you want. Prevent self-sabotage. I also wrote in white, little above it, if you can see that fine print, it says, don't open your mouth unless necessary. Ooh, don't open your mouth unless necessary. Sometimes it's necessary not to say anything. Very necessary sometimes. it can prevent self-sabotage. How many of us have ever said something in an address and sabotaged ourselves, not recognizing that there was something else on the horizon we didn't take note of? So say exactly what you want and be very mindful that you don't create an environment for self-sabotage. Some are in the habit of using negative words or phrases repeatedly. The problem is, the more we hear, read, or speak them, the more power they have over us. Make words work for you. And I wrote First Lady. You see, I wrote First Lady there because we had a nice debate about this. I said to the First Lady, my darling, when you put these PowerPoint presentations together for me, your husband, my darling, you say everything. What do you leave for me to say? I says, my darling, if I put these PowerPoint presentations out there by themselves the way you give them to me as your husband, my darling, those PowerPoint presentations, nobody will need me because they will just read everything. I said, my queen, there are PowerPoint presentations to add value to me so that I can speak. And she laughs at me. So that's why I say make words work for you. Because First Lady, she definitely, I'm telling you, if First Lady gives you a PowerPoint presentation, you just have to read it and you're comfortable. You don't need to say anything else. Just read it and you will get it. Bless her heart. No name calling or self-criticism. Please don't call names. Don't name call and self-criticize. Don't destroy yourself. Love yourself. Treat yourself with honor. Be proud of yourself. Don't criticize yourself negatively. Love you and your abilities. Stop all self-depreciation. There's appreciation and depreciation. Come on, take a load off. I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea. Yes, that's a positive word, not negative. Everybody's not going to like you. Everybody's not going to like me. That's all right. It's part of the process. There's 6 point something, almost 7 point something billion people on the earth. Why am I worried about a few 100,000? Come on. That's all right. My audience for me is there. So don't self-depreciate. There are millions of people that are just like you, think just like you, happy with just the same things you were happy with, love the same things you love, want to do the same things you want to do, want to experience things the same way you want to experience. If you want to live in the desert, I could surely guarantee you, you will find an audience of people wanting to live in the desert. If you want to stop being a Christian, trust me, I can guarantee you irrevocably, you could find an audience of millions of people that are converted to other religions other than Christianity. But equally, if you want to see persons converted from Islam to Christianity, millions of people have had enough of Islam too and want to be Christians. So the world is really vast, is so unique, and you are so unique. You just have to appreciate yourself. Appreciate this audience might not appreciate me. I'll find an audience that appreciates me. Do not depreciate. You might be running a great company and find that your colleagues and your staff and people that are with you are wavering. That's okay. Find new staff and new colleagues and new customers. Go out there, find them. Don't depreciate. Don't devalue your product. Go out there, explore, expand your territory, appreciate yourself, appreciate your product, appreciate your packaging as you improve on it. But please stop all self-depreciation. Please, it's not necessary. Oh, but they have more people following them than me. They have a larger audience. That's all right. How long were they going? How long were they at it? But they just started. Well done. They started with a good package. They started with a good team. How could you improve on your package? How could you improve on your team? Come on, somebody. There is always a positive answer or response when somebody gives you an excuse to self-depreciate. Don't ever do it. Somebody could give you 100 reasons to self-depreciate. I could give you 1,001 reasons to appreciate. Why? Because appreciating is going to cause you to recognize that every single person passed through the hornpipe and the challenges. Resist gossiping or speaking ill. My wife gave me this one, and I'm going to leave it at that. It explains itself. Resist reporting negative comments. That explains itself too. Limit the number of limited people in your circle. We can't say that enough. Part 2. So we're closing. We're going to finish. Review. This session is coming to a close finally. So let's give a quick review. The mind, thought, language. We looked at the mind and thought language. The brain changing and life altering power. The brain changing and life altering power in the use of positive words. That's what we looked at. We looked at recognizing that negative words have the same power as positive words. We reviewed that in this training. Breaking down words to learn and understand their full underlying means or meaning and the influences on them. We did that in this training this past week when we looked at words. We looked at casting spells and what it means to be casting spells. We went through that in detail. We looked at tips and techniques for changing the language of the mind. Some of the subject contents that were covered in this mentoring session for this training in the class of Steele were mindfulness, positive mental attitude, mindful choices, get out of your comfort zone, change your train of thought, change wrong thought patterns. In part 2, the review for part 2, we looked at speech. We looked at the spoken words, being aware words spoken will resonate either positively or negatively. We looked at connotations and understanding connotations. Words can have positive or negative meanings, which affect the way statements made, using them are received or perceived. We looked at knowing when it's better to use denotations and how to use them and when to use them. We mentioned that denotations are the literal sense of the words. That's what a denotation is, when you denote something. Then we look at in speaking and writing, understanding how to make a conscious decision of ensuring the correct message is delivered and received. We focused on that. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm His Excellency Dr. Michael Steele. Change your words, change your mind. Thank you for being a part of this presentation. I am so glad we have come to an end. Oh, thank God. All right, come on. Somebody fan me. All right. So we have come to the end of that session today, Friday, and I ran through it quickly because I wanted to complete it. I'm going to just quickly open any person that have any comments or anything on that in the final session. Just give me a wave and let's kind of look at that. So that we can jump into the discussion. The time is now 8:27. I think we did pretty well this evening. The time is 8:27, and I want to thank you guys who have been here. I've been watching you guys. Some of you have been having challenges with the network, but I thank you all for your attention this evening. Are there any questions or comments based on this as we close? Reverend Daniel Saputo, let me jump on you first, because I know that with regards to your network, sometimes it can be challenging. So go ahead, Your Excellency Daniel Saputo.
Good evening, Your Excellency, Reverend Michael Steele, and good evening, the First Lady. Good evening, every ambassador, every excellency in the class. I want to say that this has been a very wonderful presentation. And right from the beginning of it, it has taken us 2 good weeks. And this is wonderful. And for tonight, I just want to reiterate what you said and the importance of it. I mean, listening to yourself even before speaking. Obviously, it will help a lot when we listen to ourselves, try to find out the effect or whether positive or negative of our words when they come out. So it is very, very important. If we do that, I seriously believe that we will always come out positive, even before people. Because if we become impulsive, that is saying it before we start thinking, or saying it even before we start listening to ourselves, I seriously believe that it will have a lot of effects and affecting our relationships with people. So I want to say thank you very much for bringing that out, because not many people actually know how to listen to themselves even before speaking. Even when you had a little conversation with the COO, obviously it also brought out a lot of things. And we want to say thank you for letting us know this. I know that sometimes a lot of people have been impulsive. You know, they speak before they think. They speak before they listen to themselves. Sometimes they come back regretting what they have said, and so on. So thank you very much. I gained a lot from that, and I will, just as I have been saying, you know, try to put this into practice. Now, before I open my mouth to say anything, I just have to listen to myself first. Thank you very much. And I want to say a good night to everyone in the house. Thank you. My name is Reverend Dr. Daniel Soporo.
Thank you so very much for your submission, Reverend Daniel. I appreciate you as always, and your submissions. Please give our love to the First Lady, please. Stephen Abu, Reverend Stephen, lend your voice to the discussion this evening. How was it for you, Reverend Stephen Abu? Okay, I think Stephen's screen is frozen. His screen is frozen. Your Excellency Zionist Amaka Curry, give your thoughts. Yes, Stephen's screen was frozen. I think he's going to come back in, and I'll get him when he comes back in. Go ahead, Your Excellency Zionist.
I'm trying to understand something. I'm trying to get an in-depth understanding, or some understanding about the very point you made about being very cautious when including personal biases. It is true that once you get a hang of listening to yourself before you speak, the person can be more articulate in speaking and presenting what they want to say. But my struggle is this: in trying to be cautious, which means I need to be careful, be wary, be particular about what I'm trying to say. So in trying to do that, how do I balance being cautious against personal biases and listening to myself before I speak? Because it's like trying to sift through my thought processes before I present them, whilst at the same time listening to those. Oh, I'm lost.
You're not lost. I actually understand exactly what you're asking. And I'll tell you a little secret, actually. I'll tell you a little secret. That's the X factor. What do I mean by that's the X factor? That's why I'm not intimidated by any person trying to be me, because there's a uniqueness about me as an orator, just like there is about all the other orators out there, that is as a result of our experience, as a result of our mentoring, as a result of our training, as a result of our observations, and as a result of our discovering the necessity to do some things. For example, I said a whole lot, but I will sum it up in like this. When I'm having a conversation and I'm speaking, let me share with you my ability. So I'm speaking right now. My wife can come and talk to me. I will hear everything my wife is saying. I will be reading something on my screen at the same time that is nothing to do with what I'm speaking about. And I will be responding to a WhatsApp message on my screen that is nothing to do with what I was reading, what I am speaking about, or what my wife is saying to me. What do I mean by that? I have that ability because I developed it over time. I used to do radio broadcasting. And while I was doing the radio broadcasting, I'm talking on the radio. I'm looking for the next song. So I'm looking through songs. I'm speaking to the audience on WhatsApp and is on Yahoo Messenger and different things like that. And I'm also responding to emails that are coming in and answering questions live at the same time. So you learn how to process all of this that is going on inside of you in a very, very quick time. So it takes practice. Now, pertaining to biases, it's a little simple. When you're talking about football, for example, and you're speaking about Pelé, let's just pull Pelé. You know Pelé personally, and you had a bad experience with Pelé. But the person you're speaking to in the football match is a Pelé fan, and they love Pelé, and Pelé just scored the winning goal. Why are you going to bring up your bias about Pelé as a person? Do you see what I'm saying? While you're having that conversation, your mind is reminding you, wow, that is Pelé. But remember when you had that conversation with Pelé, how horrible he was as a person? Oh my goodness. So you have a bias, and that bias is actually being spoken while you're having the conversation, whichever place in the conversation it comes up. And you have to determine, do I express or share that bias? Because it's a bias. Now, if the bias is relevant to the conversation, for example, the person wants to have a meeting with Pelé, a personal meeting, nothing to do with football, nothing to do with how skillful he is, nothing to do with how good he is on the field, but it's to do now with the necessity to understand what a one-on-one with Pelé would be like. Your bias is now important. Why? Because you could present your bias based on the fact that, well, I had a conversation with Pele, and I remember the conversation, and it wasn't very pleasant. I personally don't think he's a nice man to talk to. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So your bias that you are going to be ever in a position to discuss needs to be relevant to the conversation that you're having, and as close to the necessity to speak it as relevantly possible. If you're just talking about Pele's skill as a footballer, it has nothing to do with his communicating skills. It doesn't matter. So it's irrelevant to discuss it, because persons will just look and say, oh, you're just a think you know it all type of person. But if it is relevant to a communicating with him outside of the football, now it becomes credible. And even then, you decide for yourself, should I tell him about my horrible experience with Pele in conversing, or should I just leave it alone? So that's why I put it there. Be very cautious when looking at sharing from the vantage point of your personal biases. Have I answered your question okay?
Yeah, can I just ask one quick one? Just one quick one. How would you employ this in a marriage?
In a marriage?
Yeah.
I told you. Didn't you see? I told you. Don't put yourself in problems. Sometimes staying silent is the best tool. If you have a bias, sometimes keep quiet. Do you think I'm going to give my wife a debate about something that I know is going to cause me to tend a wound in the bed? Why would I do that?
But supposing that bias is very crucial to your well-being or some aspect of your life, that bias in a relationship is crucial to you. It might antagonize your partner. Could your partner be lenient enough, merciful enough to look into it or to hear it and share it?
First Lady Jeannie Steele, they're calling you. Come. I apologize, but this is also important. It's part of communicating, and it's important. So today we had a very powerful meeting, and I have an opinion, and my wife had a bias. She had a total bias. But I had to say to her in no uncertain terms, I said to her, my darling, do I give you the gavel and you bring it down? Do I? Because here am I in a position of as the authority in this particular area, which she appreciates and we appreciate and we acknowledge. It's a mutual agreement, but she has a total bias and a different way of looking at dealing with it. But I had to say to her, okay, darling, do I give you the gavel and I just sit in the back and let you bring down the gavel? Then you do it. And she actually said to me, of course, I would do it. I would. No, but darling, please, how would you deal with it, darling? Because we came to a resolution that I would be the one to bring down the gavel. But how did we deal with that, darling?
Good evening. Good night to everyone. God's blessings be upon you and your household. Most of the times, or a lot of the time, we usually, though, at the end of the day, come to an understanding. The thing is a lot of the times to actually talk it out, sometimes we have things where we talk out something for like a whole half an hour, a whole half of a day. So we can actually, I can actually understand, because remember, we're two different people. He's male and I'm female, and we communicate a bit differently. So sometimes it takes sometimes it does take a while for me to really understand what he is trying to put over, and vice versa. So at the end of the day, we do come to a lot of conclusions once the understanding is met. And personal biases, sometimes, as he was saying earlier, sometimes they are a bit irrelevant, because I may bring up something that it really wasn't necessary to bring up and trying to get over my point. But rather than bringing over my point, I caused more confusion. So it needs to be relevant to the conversation or relevant to the point where you want a positive outcome or whatever outcome that you're expecting. Whatever you're going to input needs to be relevant. So if the bias could cause conflict and it really isn't necessary, just leave it out. If it is something, if it's not a bias and it is an issue, because to me it sounds more like maybe an issue rather than a bias. But if it's an issue, well, then you have to handle that in a different way. But a personal bias is a reflection of something that you've experienced that you will bring it out to the forefront in a situation where it's absolutely necessary to what you're experiencing at the moment. If not, just don't bother to. That's what I would say.
And I think, thank you, my darling. And equally, I'm the same. Sometimes to give an example of why I did what I did, I would give a biased opinion, my own. And then she equally would look at it and we would be kind of like hashing it out, because sometimes my bias is irrelevant based on the current situation that we are looking at. So a lot of times we use biases to sometimes get our way or to influence the conversation in our favor. That's why we use biases sometimes, to get people doing what we would want them to do rather than what the situation dictates. I hope that has added value to the question, Your Excellency Zionist.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Okay. All right. Okay, so Stephen, Reverend Stephen, I see you. Reverend Stephen, could you unmute yourself? And I knew you dropped off just now when we were trying to get you to connect.
Yes. Good evening, Your Excellency.
Good evening.
Good evening, Your Excellency. Dr. Michael Steele. Thanks. I appreciate you for this time. My network has been so poor, going off and coming in, and the class has been have been interrupted. But I have some few things to ask. Connotations and denotations and all that. When you were speaking about them, I want to appreciate the excellencies in the house. Her Excellency Jenny Steele in the background, Excellency Zionist Amaka, Her Excellency Doreen Ringi, His Excellency Chief Protocol Donald Years, and other excellencies in the house. I want to talk, I was trying to appreciate and to say that connotations to be another way of expressing yourself in terms of that it's a hidden, there's a hidden meaning to it. When you express yourself in connotation, there's a hidden meaning behind it. There is something that you want to pass through, something that our elders then in this part of the country used to use. They used to use source connotations, to bring out lessons and all that. So I really appreciate if with that coming from all we've been learning, connotations and denotations tonight, I want to appreciate that there are better ways for us to look at it. And I know as we go on that it's going to be so great and interesting. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. As a matter of fact, interestingly, when First Lady and myself were putting this together, that was one of the very facts that we acknowledge. A lot of individuals speak around the bush. They don't speak directly to the bush. And,
Yes.
and sometimes that creates so many misunderstandings and misinterpretations, and individuals don't willfully disobey or dishonor. Individuals genuinely did not really understand what you were trying to say. And equally, you try to explain it by putting another connotation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we in our cultures sometimes speak in parables and phrases that don't lend to the direct situation, and unenlightened individuals just get trapped in a Bible verse or a passage of scripture, and it doesn't add value sometimes to the current situation that they are faced with. So we need to be in an environment and exercise a capacity to communicate exactly what we mean in a language that is clear, but beyond that, get feedback so we know that what we were saying was, one, received, two, understood, and the action that is expected as a result of that communication will be realized.
Yes. Yes. You're right, sir.
All right. Thank you.
That's excellent. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so very much. For Your Excellency Doreen Burunji, your submission, and then we'll go to His Excellency Dr. Charles. Bishop Comfort, you're there with us. Go ahead, Your Excellency Doreen Burunji.
Yes, good evening, Your Excellency, Dr. Michael Steele, once again, our First Lady Jenny Steele, and all the excellencies in the house. My take on tonight's discussion is mostly focused on the negative self-sabotage. Self-sabotage has really made people not go to where it has made so many people not to achieve what they want to achieve. I just want to add on it that maybe you help me understand it also better. You can be in an environment whereby people just keep talking negatively about you or talk to you negatively every time you encounter them. Now, and I mean, it's inevitable for you not to go to that place. In this situation, what would the victim do? That's a question for you, Dr. Michael Steele, just to for you to guide me on that. Because if you have been hearing negative words and they're directly to what you're doing or to your person, who you are, and you have to spend, for example, 6 hours in that place, what would that person do? And that's on a daily. What would the person do?
You know, Doreen, I will answer you. I will answer you. And I'll answer you softly and in humility. I have worked for individuals in my youth that I quit and moved on to working in other environments because to justify not paying you what you're due, they discredit you, they pull you down, they talk you down, and your spirit can get burdened and overwhelmed, and interestingly, in that type of environment, you make more mistakes. For example, I went to learn trade when I was 16 years old, 17. I went to learn trade. And in learning trade as a carpenter, I'm a carpenter joiner by trade and by profession. I went to C class, then B class, then A class, then a carpenter joiner. And in that process of those years of my mentorship or my apprenticeship, then you go on job training with individuals that they don't want to pay you what you're worth. So every little mistake you make, they blast you. And every day that you go to work, 8 hours, 7:30 till 4:30, that was my work day. Every day you go to work, you're constantly bombarded with your stupidity and you are you not learning? Are you fake? Are you an idiot? And it's constant on the construction site. And those that are better equipped than you, they're laughing, and even when they make mistakes, nobody highlights them. And even I started to get angry to the point of saying, but look, this person is making a mistake. Why don't you pick on them? Why block, and It sends a negative vibe to the point where you start making stupid mistakes, to the point where you start to think this is not for me, because your mind just gets bombarded all the time. So I stopped working for construction firms and I opened my own construction firm, Rock and Steel Construction. And I started having people work for me. And the people that I would never forget, when I employed for my first contract, I had to build 14 condominiums in St. Lawrence in Barbados, Missile Cove. If you Google Missile Cove, St. Lawrence, Barbados, Rock and Steel Construction, I was responsible for doing that in Barbados. But when those persons that treated me so horribly had to come to me to be interviewed for a job, it was funny, because here are these people that were calling me a nobody, this and all these other things, because they didn't want to pay me what I was worth, but now I'm the one employing them. What do I mean by that, Doreen? Doreen, you maintain your positive attitude. Don't let somebody stop you from being the best you that you can be. Just be the best you can be out of their space. Because when you're in somebody's space, you have to pipe to their tune. As a matter of fact, you even behave to their expectation. Oh, Ricky's an idiot. He can't do jack. Everything he goes to do something, he's always messing it up. So why do you keep Ricky employed? Because nobody else will work with you and tolerate your attitude. Only Ricky is desperate enough to pay his bills and to look after his family, so he sticks around you. But the day that Ricky finds himself and a capacity and ability to move on, you're lost. And then you're going, oh, Ricky, you know, I really love you, man. You know, I'm always joking. Ricky, come on. So Doreen, keep being you, but avoid negative people. I said it. Avoid them. You have to. You have to. Forgive. Listen, look, if I close on this note, listen to me. If your circle goes from 5,000 to 500, yeah, even if your circle drops down to 50 from 5,000, because you are eradicating negativity, listen to me. You are 10,000 times better off in a 50 circle that is positive than in a 5,000 circle that is riddled with negativity, because the negativity is going to rub off on you. And very soon you will become toxic as a person. And if you want to avoid toxicity as a person, you need to change your environment. You need to change your phone. You need to stop answering some people and just go to sleep with water running out of your eyes, because you're so wounded because of how they've abused you. You're so wounded because of how they've hurt you. You're so wounded because of how they've taken advantage of you. You're so wounded that every time they talk to you, they make you feel like you're a nobody. But you love them, but you care about them. But trust me, you got to love yourself and care about yourself more. You have to, because if you don't, then you become toxic and you're no use to anybody else. And the minute you see somebody around you make an error, instead of seeing it as an opportunity for you to teach them how to be better, you see it as an opportunity to criticize them. You see it as an opportunity to pull them down. You even see it as an opportunity to remember how you were when people were talking to you. And then you want to treat them the way people treated you. So if you want to change how you respond to that, you have to remove yourself from it. You don't have a choice. I hope I've answered your question, Your Excellency. Please, have I answered your question?
Yes, Your Excellency. One has to remove themselves in whatever group you are in. If it means your family, you have to remove yourself. Yeah. Thank you, Your Excellency. That was my submission tonight.
Don't be sad about leaving your family. You will never lose your family. The richer you are, you can send money to them in an envelope and love them from a distance.
Yes, yes, Your Excellency.
Dr. Charles, go ahead, Dr. Charles.
Good evening, Your Excellency, Dr. Michael Steele, and good evening, the First Lady, and all the excellencies in the house. Actually, when you were talking, I picked on two things here, and it reflects on the experience I had today. Number one is beware of your audience. And number two, be very cautious when including your personal bias. This morning, I received an invitation for a live broadcast in the radio station. And they want me to talk about St. Valentine's Day. And actually, I was a person that was not much interested in that Valentine's Day because of what people turn it into, the day to display high level or high classy morality. But when I got there, I was thinking how I could approach this conversation. So I told them I was going to talk from three angles: the good, the bad, the ugly. And once I say the good, the bad, the ugly, the moderator knew as a preacher man what my bad and ugly was going to be. So he just allowed me finish the good aspect. He started asking me questions. Then this good aspect, how do you think it can affect families, relationship with parents, children, then government and the people? My, oh my, that was where my bias wanted to take in. Because honestly, I can't lie to you. I'm so biased on the way our government treat the masses. But I remember that the audience is both the government. There are things I could say. Then, because it's a federal government radio station, then the director will be in trouble. He might be fired. They ask him, where do you bring this madman from? So I was able to hold back my bias and told him that what I want to tell the government and the people is that the people should learn how to be tolerant and then not sabotage the effort of the government in order to label them bad government. But the government should as well learn how to take constructive criticism from the people as checks and balances and not going to clamp them down, intimidating them. So based on these two principles, being aware of your environment and handling be cautious about your personal bias. When I finished, I was discussing with the presenter. The presenter shook her head and said, Dr. Charles, you really handled this case maturely and you were well balanced in the thing. So Dr. Michael Steele, I believe that this interaction with a class of Steele takes us to a lot of good places and great heights. Because if you have not said this, and if it hadn't happened to me by intuition, I would have started pouring out the content of my provocations in my heart. Even if I didn't get into trouble, somebody might get into trouble because of me. So I thank you very much for elaborating on being aware of your audience and be cautious when including your personal bias. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you so very much for your submission, Dr. Charles, and that's important. I'm very confident doing these videos live and having any conversation and answering any question, because there are two things that are in the back of my mind. One, you're an ambassador to the United Nations. Two, you're a bishop and everybody's watching you. 3, you're a past advisor in certain places and capacities that are definitely listening to you. And then 4, you have to represent your family and your brand. And whenever I speak and I have a conversation, I make sure I balance my answers and my responses appropriately. You would notice how close I am with my wife. I do not have these meetings without involving the First Lady. And the reason is because I don't want to have a conversation that's going to be biased. And when the First Lady hears me say something, then when I come off, I get a debate and a discussion that might be uncalled for. Because at the end of the day, I mentor individuals in all aspects of their lives, their sexual relationships, their marital relationships, their business, their financial, every area we mentor. So if the First Lady was not with me, there are lots of times I would get in trouble, especially when she hears me with any of my clients that I'm mentoring talking about sex. She would want to know what manner of madness is this. But she's the one that is always there that I says, please hold on, talk to my wife. Let my wife explain to you. Makes it easier for me because I don't have to lay down and justify my conversations and have debates. So always be mindful of your audience, always. Your audience, meaning, remember this, meaning not just who you're talking to, but also who's hearing you that you might not be talking to. I will leave you with that one. Bishop Comfort, Your Excellency. Go ahead, Bishop Comfort.
Good evening, Your Excellency Bishop Steele. Your Excellency, please, can you hear me?
Yes, we are hearing you. I'm wondering if you're all dressed up for me at this hour of the night. Hey, I'm telling you.
So I continue. I salute Your Excellency, Jenny, you, and also all the excellencies in the house. In actual fact, your presentation to us this evening puts me into thinking. If I can get it right, you are trying to say that before one say anything, one has to think about it before speaking. Like our days when our parents would say, wait, wouldn't you think what you are saying before you speak? And then sometimes when you are saying something that is out of the way, then they will tell you, listen to yourself. Listen to yourself. Now, to put both thoughts together, what I get is that one should not just get up and speak anyhow. Before you utter a word or when you are in a conversation with somebody, you listen carefully to what the person is saying. As the person is speaking, you also form your words in your head and think about it, whether it is good to spell it out. Let me put it this way. Well, it's a good idea, but then when it becomes like you are on the platform and you have prepared a speech, as for that, you have already thought about that before saying. But if all of a sudden you are confronted with some people and you are sharing ideas, sometimes it will not go so quickly for you to think about what you are saying before you utter a word. But then there's wisdom in what you are saying. And so doing, your conversation or your words become few and it will be full of wisdom because you have already calculated everything before bringing them out. And as one is giving out the presentation, one is talking, and you look at the person, more often we also say that actions more than words.
Yes.
So you can be able to decipher, a lot of students will decipher what the person means instead of what the person is saying. There's a whole lot of what you have taught us today. And I think if we go over our notes over and over and over, we'll be able to put our thoughts into shape, and thereby our words will be of wisdom. And then instead of saying a whole lot of things without anything much, we will say that, well, at the end of the day, you have given out a sound and a good presentation. So thank you so much for I would say your kind teaching this evening. Is good for us. Thank you so much, Excellence. We are very grateful.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Your Excellency, Bishop Dr. Comfort Adu out of Ghana. Thank you so very much. We're going to close this evening. I apologize for running a little bit late. It is 9:08 and we're a little bit late. But I want to bring this session to a close by saying thank you very much for being a part of this evening's broadcast and teaching. And again, we're going to fine tune and tweak this training that we did for this. I think we did it 6 weeks, this 6-week training. And we are actually, First Lady and I have been discussing that we're going to make this a live course, a live training where we will be doing it. Hello? Oh, I'm sorry. First Lady saying 6 days. Oh, I said 6 weeks. Oh, I'm sorry. 6 days. This 6 days training, First Lady and myself, we've been discussing it, and we're going to make it into a live training here in London, in the UK, and then we would take it further a breath. But I think it is one worthy of giving good attention to, because it can be very helpful in looking at our mental health situations that are facing the nations currently, because we now have to focus on our mind, the thoughts that we're hearing, the words we're hearing in our own heads, how to communicate, how to look at our biases. 2020 and 2021 have given us so many biases that when we look at 2022 and 2023, we can be very biased. But we need to look at how could we change those biases? How can we look at putting positive things in place when we are so experienced with so many negatives? So I hope that you would be a part of those trainings when they come up live and in person, because we will be making this one of the model courses for the class of Steele, specifically this one. I think it was a very successful one. And I want to thank everyone that participated. Thank you for your contributions, for your support, for your comments. It has been a fantastic opportunity to be your mentor during this time. I equally want to give honor to First Lady Jeannie Steele, who has penned all of this, and we've done all of the research for this over a number of months. This has taken us quite a while to put together, and I think she did a fantastic job. First Lady Jeannie Steele, thank you so very much, my dear. You are an amazing companion, but beyond that, you are equally an excellent student of the English language. And it has been very helpful doing this. And I look forward to us doing it in person and in real time. With that being said, let me allow First Lady Jeannie Steele to close us this evening. And I hope to see you guys tomorrow in our conference that starts tomorrow at 9 a.m. London time, on the link that you would have had if you registered. Your Excellency Jeannie Steele, over to you, please, ma'am.
Good night again to all the excellencies in the house. You know, it's so beautiful when I hear the word house, because we would say the class of Steele, and I've been hearing a lot of you coin the word house. You know, it's like we are at home with each other. And I love that. That makes me feel secure and happy and full of joy. The class of Steele House. Anyway, just a reminder of our conference tomorrow. This is our ladies' conference. We'll have our men's conference next Saturday, the 19th of February. They're both starting at 9 a.m. This is London time, and will run until 4 p.m. They will have a short 45-minute break in the afternoon for lunch. We have several wonderful and knowledgeable experienced masters who will be delivering their knowledge to us and sharing their knowledge with us to enlighten us further on this journey. The ladies conference, again, it's starting tomorrow at 9 a.m. sharp. This is on Zoom. If you haven't registered, I hope you're able to receive the link from one of our members, or you can go to our Facebook page at Ask Dr. Steele. And when you go to the Facebook page, you click on events, and our events page, you will see there would have the link to register for tomorrow's session. And for next Saturday session, which is the men's session, the link for that will be available over the weekend. So men, you get prepared to be ready to register for the men's session next Saturday. I believe His Excellency Dr. Steele has also invited the men to the women's conference tomorrow. So the doors are open to all gentlemen who would like to participate and also be a part of what the women will receive and share. And I think, though at first I was kind of hesitant about his opening the doors to the gentlemen, but in relationship and in understanding each other, it's good when we are able to sit in the same classrooms together, so that when the ladies share, the gentlemen can hear and get the ladies' perspective and vice versa. And it helps us to get along better as in our families and in our communities, in our workplace, and in everything we do, because we're both here on this planet together, both men and women, and we need to be able to communicate and work together for the best of all of us. So tomorrow, I look forward to seeing you ladies and gentlemen who would like to attend. God bless you all. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you so very much, my dearest. Ladies and gentlemen, I love you all very much. Good night and God bless. Good night, everybody. Your Excellency Doreen Zionist, Dr. Charles, comfort.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, sir.
Everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. With God's blessing.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.